You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters. Well, this has been something we've been sort of wondering about, anticipating. Would we get any early ideas about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation? Who would be the odd man out? Of course, they wasn't going to carry, I don't assume they would carry 4. And actually, it's 5. It's 5 because you've got Deshaun Watson's ass lurking around out there like Hannibal Lecter, waiting to pop up in October to bleep up this whole deal. That's something we've talked about in the past. There is a world where he will end up filing a grievance, in theory, against the Browns if the Browns don't want him to come back, which is kind of crazy because normally it's the player filing a grievance against the club because the club wants him to come back and the player saying, I'm still hurt. The reverse scenario, the bizarro scenario of that situation. Okay, so we got some word here, some early NFL insider extraordinaire kind of action about who might be the odd man out. And I can't say I'm overly surprised here because they're brand new investments by this club. Now, if I'm to tell you who I'm leaning towards to be out, it's Kenny Pickett. It's been Kenny Pickett. Again, I think Sanders is under the umbrella of Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam's sitting back. He's seeing roads paved with gold. All right, he's sitting back thinking he's got the next big monetary thing in Sanders. Maybe he does. I don't know. But I think he wants to keep Shedeur for reasons that may not always be entirely wrapped up in football. All right, merch sales, probably a thing. Sanders following on social media, probably a thing. Colorado Buffaloes football legend Shedeur Sanders will almost certainly not end up on the Cleveland Browns practice squad. That's interesting. It's interesting that they wouldn't put him there, but it's also not surprising because if they put him on the practice squad, he can, in theory, get picked up by another team. And again, they probably don't want that to happen. After training camp in the preseason, CBS Sports' Jonathan Jones reports that Sanders and Dillon Gabriel would be safe from being cut or traded if they don't win the starting job this offseason. Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco are not afforded that same luxury. Interesting. So Jonathan Jones is saying it's either Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco that's going to be the odd person out. And if I am the Cleveland Browns fan base and it is Joe Flacco, I am fit to be tied after what that dude did for that club a couple of years ago, getting them to the playoffs. Quote, if Dillon Gabriel wins the battle between Shedeur Sanders in the battle of the rookies, I actually don't see Shedeur Sanders going to the practice squad. If Shedeur beats out Dillon Gabriel, I don't see Dillon Gabriel going to the practice squad. And I also don't see the Browns keeping 4 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, Jones said per on SI. Quote, well, who goes, question mark. The answer is whoever is the loser of Joe Flacco versus Kenny Pickett. One could say we're all losers. We're all losers to that loser battle. Andrew Berry, the general manager of... I love Joe Flacco, actually. Andrew Berry, the general manager of Cleveland Browns, he loathes cutting his draft picks. So yeah, but what if he didn't necessarily want one of the draft picks, question mark. Doesn't that change things? This is a team that always holds on to its draft picks far more than the average NFL team. NFL insider Mike Garafolo is skeptical the team would hold on to 4 quarterbacks, striking a worried tone about whether Sanders or Gabriel makes it through the waiver system without being claimed. Quote, you're not keeping 4 quarterbacks. You got 4 on the roster here. You traded for Kenny Pickett, then to just get rid of him doesn't make much sense. You could have 4 quarterbacks in the building, just not necessarily on the roster. So I think that's the way it's going to play out. Which of those rookies can put stuff on tape in the preseason that makes it hard for the Browns to then subject one to get through waivers to get to the practice squad? The, quote, grown QB may just be safer from being exiled from the organization than Flacco, who's 40 years old and better off on a contender dealing with injury issues under center. Sanders and Gabriel are almost certainly safe from being regulated to the practice squad. So in other words, they're saying that maybe, ultimately somebody might decide they'd rather have Joe Flacco as their backup on a contending team. I mean, is that understandable? Yeah, I think it is. If I am, okay, not even a contender. Tennessee Titans just lost Will Levis. Joe Flacco, backup quarterback to Cam Ward, the rookie. That makes sense. The Minnesota Vikings and the connection between Kevin O'Connell and Kevin Stefanski, Joe Flacco as a backup makes a lot of sense. Who the hell is the backup in Jacksonville, ? To Trevor Lawrence. Now you're getting the picture. There's a lot of places where Joe Flacco could be the legitimate, clear number 2 guy. Miami Dolphins behind Tua. That's something to think about across the league. One could argue, I guess, Josh Dobbs isn't too bad. I like Josh Dobbs in New England. I think Joe Milton, I need to make a video on Joe Milton and the Cowboys. I haven't checked in on old Bazooka Joe, the other Bazooka Joe that's not named Flacco. But the other guy that Dallas Cowboy fans are going to be like, Jesus H, this guy's arm. Jesus H, this guy can run. Somebody get Dak Prescott the hell off this team. I'm telling you, Cowboys fans are about to have their imaginations captured. Joe Milton, whoa, serious. Tools, traits, that's the real Anthony Richardson tools and traits guy right there. So anyway, that has flashed that he can actually potentially play. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's interesting. I don't know. Maybe they would cut Joe Flacco. And then you're rocking with tiny hands? Is that what we're doing? I just don't. I'm gonna stay with my original prediction. Okay, my original prediction: Joe Flacco starts. Shedeur Sanders is QB2. QB3 is Dillon Gabriel. And I think there's a world where you could absolutely flip those, QB2 and QB3 there. And we're hearing that Shedeur hasn't even had first-team reps at all. That may have changed today or yesterday, but to my knowledge, no. No practice squad. You can't put him on the practice squad. I don't think. Somebody would pick up one of the two. So you can't do that. Maybe you put Flacco on the practice squad and cross your fingers. I don't know that he's going to love that. Peace. I'm out. Until next time. Before we jump in, make sure you go to our merch store. Our Make Basketball Great Again shirt and our newest shirt that just came out. Both shirts are brand new. The American Flag Skull Fever Enforcer shirt. And use promo code CC22 for 20% off.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.